Hey there, Wargamers. Welcome to another painting video. This time I will be doing the first in a series of videos where I will be painting the Ascended Sister Erzebel from the Raging Heroes Toughest Girls in the Galaxy Kickstarter. I've been really looking forward to this model. As you can see, it is absolutely gorgeous. Anyway, I'm going to be starting off with the wings, and as you can see here, I've already primed them and done a little bit of pre-shading. Now, pre-shading isn't something I've done a lot of, so I don't necessarily know if it came through quite well enough in this particular video. But then again, this one is not really a tutorial video. This is more of a join me as I paint something video. So I'm going to start with Badger Fur from Minotaur, and the first couple steps are all going to be airbrush. So basically here I am. I'm just trying to put on a light base coat of the Badger Fur, just sort of get that gray undertone to the model. Trying to keep some of the darkness and the depth still there, but generally just trying to get that nice even tone to start off with everything. Mostly because the plan for this one is going to be working from a white to a blue fade. So here we are. Everything has been base coated with the Badger Fur. Next up, I'm going to start working on the whites with Snow White, and these are mostly going to be closer to the inside of the wing where I want more of the white to be. So I'm not too concerned if it bleeds out a little bit to the outside feathers of it. But as you can see, just building it up mostly on the inside of it, trying to get a nice solid white tone to it. Yeah, so just some nice thin layers here and there, and I'm doing this all on low pressure. Next up is Werewolf Gray, and this is sort of a nice mid-tone of blue and white. And the whole idea here is I'm going to be putting this in as the transition color. So basically, this is going to be the mid-tone between the final blue on the outside of the feathers and the white on the inside. So as usual, just building up a nice thin layer of it, building up the color slowly. Don't want to obscure too much details. So you can see that it's come together quite nicely here, just trying to get a little bit more bold in some cases. But it provides that nice mid-tone for it, as you can see. So moving on to the next step, we are going to use some Spellslinger Blue. And this is going to be providing the base for the outermost tips of the feathers. So this is going to be where the blue tries to be the brightest. So once again, nice thin coats, trying to put it on very, very carefully, very gradually. You don't want to go over any of the inner areas of the feathers because we want to keep that white transition in there. And just going to slowly build it up. And you can see it getting stronger as we go along. And once again, very low pressure on this. Haven't been working with high pressure with any of these paints except for the Badger Fur, mostly because I want to maintain some control. I don't want to go on too thick too fast. So there we have, you can see the nice transitions built up there. And what we're going to do is we're just going to go back to the Snow White quickly, and we're just going to build up the inside of the wings a little bit, mostly around the edges where I guess they would be attached to the bone structure, the human structure. I'm not entirely sure what that part of the wing is called. But again, just the inside of the wings, just to brighten it up a little bit. Just building up the colors a little bit more, easing the transitions a bit, as you can see. So these coats are going to go a long way in providing the base for what we're going to be working on moving forward. Because after this, we're going to be getting out the paintbrush and the washes. So to start it off, we have Drakenhof Nightshade. And what we're going to do here is we're going to use the wash just to get into the feathers itself, the blue part of the feathers. And we're just going to start providing some depth for the wings as a whole. Also, it's going to provide a nice little bit of, going to make the blue a little bit bolder in this case. As you can see, I switched brushes here to my split medium layer brush. Now, as you can see, I'm also pulling the wash toward the outer edges of the feathers. This is to try and keep the streaks to a minimum. Also trying to get rid of as much of the pooling as possible. So as you can see here, I keep going back, adding a little bit more, trying not to put too much in one place, and always pulling outwards, trying to keep those streaks to a minimum, and trying to reduce the amount of pooling or bunching, because we don't want to end up with one of those color rings that you can get if you let the wash just sort of sit there. So moving on, we go to the Nuln Oil, and this one we're just going to put over top of the white feathers. And the whole point of the Nuln Oil is we're just going to give some depth to the white feathers. And now, as I was doing this, I wasn't quite as careful as I should have been. As you can see, the feathers are coming out a little bit grayer than I otherwise would have liked. And this is just an unfortunate circumstance of how I went about doing this. You could definitely do it a lot more deliberately, which would end up giving you a better look. So anyway, next up we're going to take Ulthwyn Grey, and we're going to take out the trusty dry brush, and we're just going to start brightening up the white feathers a little bit. Once again, don't worry too much if you get some on the transition colors, because once again it'll just help sort of build up that transition from the white to the blue. And we're just going to do this to try and build up the colors a little bit more, the white a little bit more, just to make it look a little bit brighter. And as you're doing it, just make sure you hit the edges of the wing structure as well, just to help brighten it up. Next up, we are going to move on to Rust Gray, and sticking with our trusty dry brush here, we're going to use this color to sort of help embolden the transition color from the white to the blue. So as you can see here, I'm just sort of bringing up the mid-tones in the transition using the Rust Gray, and just slowly building it up. Once again, with dry brushing, you always want to make sure that you're just putting on a little bit at a time. You don't want to overload it too much. Make sure that it's going on nice and thin. And you can see here we're starting to see that really nice transition from the light to the dark. Next up is White Scar, and we're once again taking the dry brush, and we're just going to use it to sort of give one last dry brush of white to the feathers, just to sort of help bring up that the brightness of it, because we want that higher contrast between the white and the blue. So like before, make sure that you're not putting it on too heavy. It's always better to be able to go back and put on more, as opposed to having to try and fix it and take some off. And of course, with this one, you just want to hit the highest points of it. You don't need to worry about getting too much into the depth of the feathers itself. So you can see here we're slowly building up the colors on all the insides of the wings, some on the multiple layers of wings, because as you can see, there's 3 sets here. But it just helps brighten the model up a little bit more. Next up, we're going to start working with the blue, and we're going to take Lothern Blue, and we're going to use dry brush onto the darkest parts of the blue feathers, and these just on the extreme edges here, and these are just meant to sort of give a little bit of pop to the model itself. Just try and give that last highlight to the blue feathers themselves. Now, as I've been doing all this, I've looked at the model since I finished, and I think I'm going to go back and do a little bit more, just because after a couple more steps, the highlight doesn't come through as clearly. So it's one of those things where highlight to your content on this one. I think I'm going to bring it up a little bit bolder, but you can see the effect here. You can see that we're getting the nice brighter blue going on at the very tips of the feathers and on the raised parts on the inside of the feathers, and it's just helping bring up the contrast between the white and the blue itself. So we're just slowly building it up here. So as you can see, this is the effect of the final dry brush highlight on the wings, and we have that nice contrast, that nice build from white to blue. Now we're going to go back to the White Scar here, and instead of dry brushing, what we're going to do is we're just going to apply a line highlight along the some of the raised edges of the wings themselves, just to sort of bring up the brightness a little bit more and give it a little bit of a nice solid smooth color. Now of course you can take this a couple steps further, and you can start doing it along the feathers themselves. Make every feather individually pop. You're not going to see that in this video, but it is something that's likely going to happen. Next up, we're going to do the same thing with Lothern Blue. Going to go back to the extreme edges of the feathers on the tips, and we're just going to build up the blue there, just clean it up a little bit, give some nice solid highlights to it. And again, this is just going to help make the model pop. So from there, well, here's the final result of that right here. And of course you can go through each individual feather and do that. And we're going to move on to the Guilliman blue glaze at this point. Now this is one of the last steps, and here we're just going to use this to sort of tie the blue together, because there's been a lot of dry brushing, so you want to make sure that things work together a little bit more. So as you can see, we're just lightly applying the glaze to the model itself, not too thick. We just want the glaze to work with the model. And this is just to tie the colors together a little bit more, try to reduce some of the lines from the dry brushing, just in case it wasn't the lightest of dry brush. But it also just brings the colors together a bit more, makes it look a little bit smoother, and brightens up the edges a little bit more. Now, of course, with any glaze, you can use it to your content. You can do multiple thin coats to really build up the color. As you can see here, I'm actually rather happy with the way it looks. The blue looks really nice. The transition colors are great. So there are all the Citadel colors I've used for this one. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Please let me know in the comments below if you enjoyed it, what you'd like to see, and all that sort of stuff. You can always follow me along on Facebook and Instagram at Aegisbrand Studios. And if you enjoyed the video, give it a like and hopefully subscribe, and I'll see you guys around next time. And stay tuned for future painting videos. I'm going to be doing more in this series as well as